A warm welcome to Diplomatic Channel. I'm Amarachi Ubani. This week, we explore the possibility of nations adopting vaccine passports as part of documents for international travel. Some nations, especially in Europe, have been toying with the idea, and as COVID-19 vaccines reach new areas, will the passports ensure safer travel, or are they just another advantage some countries have over others who are yet to vaccinate huge populations? My guest is Deputy Vice Chancellor, Sefago Makato Health Sciences University in Pretoria, South Africa, Professor Lekon Ayo Yusuf. Later in the program, the world mourns Britain's Prince Philip, who died on Friday, April 9th. That's Diplomatic Channel in a wrap. The world has never been more interested in vaccination campaigns than now because of the coronavirus. Health experts say it should be the surest way of protecting against the coronavirus, as we would reach herd immunity faster, thereby eradicating the virus and building greater immunity. And while the UK and the United States, even China, have the highest vaccination rates in the world, there are countries where it is yet to begin. So as these countries consider reopening airspace and encouraging international travel, they're thinking about vaccine passports. These are digital certificates to prove vaccination status used to gain entry into events or businesses, such as a QR code on a smartphone that you use while shopping and so on. And the term is controversial, though, because of connotations of authoritarian government and fears of Big Brother. The truth is, we have been using vaccine certificates for all passports for years now. Yellow fever is the most common here in Africa. In the early 1900s, the United States required proof of vaccination for smallpox, an international border crossing, or one of the immigration processing facilities. A country is still yet to determine whether the COVID-19 vaccine passports will become a requirement. However, the vaccine must be administered at least 14 days before departure. In March, the EU Commission brought forward its proposal for the creation of a digital green certificate in a bid to restore travel amid COVID-19 for those who have been vaccinated against the virus. The same document can also be used to prove that the holder has recovered from COVID-19. Those who have not been vaccinated, nor have they recovered from the virus, can use the document to present their COVID-19 test results. By including all three situations in one document, the Commission intends to avoid discrimination of non-vaccinated persons. While the UK is slowly coming out of a 3-month lockdown, Prime Minister Boris Johnson says it's too soon to decide whether the COVID-19 vaccine passport will be a requirement for international travellers. And while the issue of vaccine passports remains a controversial topic, the World Health Organization is not excited about it due to the imbalance in vaccine distributions. Let's talk to Professor Lekon Ayo Yusuf. He's the Deputy Vice Chancellor, Research at Sefago Makato Medical Sciences University in Pretoria. He's also a member of the Gauteng COVID Advisory Committee. He joins us from Pretoria. Professor Ayo Yusuf, thank you for joining us on Diplomatic Channel.
Thank you for having me, and good afternoon to your listeners and your viewers.
We're happy to have you. Can I begin by asking if you have taken any of the COVID-19 vaccines?
Yes, I have, and I'm very proud to have done that. It's the right thing to do.
Which one did you take? Would you like to tell us?
Well, I must say I would not like to advertise any particular one, but I have taken the Johnson & Johnson vaccine.
How great, because a lot of people are still trying to make up their minds about taking the jab. For example, now that the European Medicines Agency has confirmed a possible link between the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine and rare blood clots. So what do you say to people like that who are still undecided whether to go ahead and take the jab, because they're saying we don't know much about these vaccines? Now we're hearing about AstraZeneca. We haven't heard much about the others, Johnson & Johnson, Moderna, Pfizer. Who knows what their own faults could be?
Yeah, I would say I took the one I took because that was the one that was available in South Africa as a health professional. And the AstraZeneca works in a similar way as the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. They are essentially virus vector kind of vaccines. So yes, indeed, you may have side effects like every other thing. I need to let people do an exercise of opening a Panadol package and open the insert on the side effects. You probably would not want to take the Panadol when you read about the possible side effects. But we all know that the probability of that happening is very minute, and the advantage you get from taking the medicine at that time overweighs any side effect. And that's what I need to say to all the people that want or contemplating taking or not taking the vaccine, to say the benefit of you taking outweigh any risk that might be. Like every other medication, there's always that risk. So one thing for sure, if we all take the vaccine, we will then all get protected. If only a few of us take the vaccine, we all not protected, because the herd immunity is what we all need to protect us. And the longer we take to take the vaccine or to reach the herd immunity, the worse the virus could get in terms of mutating, and may get even more deadlier than we have it currently. So many people might think, oh, I can hang out around and not take it because maybe the virus is not that bad. The longer you wait, everybody else says that, that means we are not going to get herd immunity, and that means the virus will likely to mutate as it moves around everyone, and it means it could get more deadly.
Vaccinations is to create herd immunity even faster, because then the virus does not have the opportunity to, spread and to mutate, and then, creating more variants and so on. But do you think that herd immunity really is achievable?
We may not be able to achieve that with the current distribution of the vaccine. The COVAX strategy currently is that we will get about 20% of the African population vaccinated by the end of 2022, which is next year. And we're talking about herd immunity means you need 60 to 70% of the population vaccinated. So we are really too far from it. So we need to really get back to a situation where the global health diplomacy needs to start to take place, where governments needs to talk to government. We need to accelerate access to the vaccine for Africans in order for the world to become safer and all of us to get the herd immunity. Because there will be no herd immunity if Africans are not vaccinated.
Yeah, and I raised that point also because, the UK and the US especially, at the start of this pandemic, a lot of them put in a lot of money into research for COVID-19 vaccines. And so, when the vaccines were ready, a lot of those vaccines, the doses had already been bought up. Well, they bought up most of, the vaccines that the world has produced. And now there is a shortage because the Serum Institute of India, has stopped production of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, COVID-19 vaccine. And then, other countries are looking for ways, to fill in the gaps. Now, countries like even Nigeria are considering other vaccines which are outside of what, the agreement with COVAX is. But, where we're still trying to figure out, what vaccines are ready, these vaccines were made, they're like the first generation coronavirus vaccines. And you have variants of coronavirus now springing up around the world. How sure are we that these variants are still, how sure are we that the vaccines created in the first generation of vaccines are effective against these variants? Because people are asking that question, which is probably why they're still hesitant about receiving vaccinations.
Yeah, so I think one of the things we need to understand about the vaccine is that we've got the disease that ranges from being mild, moderate to severe hospitalization and death on a continuum. So oftentimes the vaccines are tested. We do have much more people with mild to moderate than with severe to death, as you probably know. So when they get tested, they're often tested for mild to moderate. So it may well be I mean, from experience now that we now know that oftentimes when they test with relatively lower efficacy for mild to moderate disease, they all generally are very effective, even for the variant, for the severe to death or hospitalization. They often prevent that. So I would say to people, it's not enough to hesitate to getting it. What would eventually happen, and the worst scenario, is that as we move along and we prevent severe and hospitalization and death, even if we may get more mild diseases, we will eventually get into vaccines or second generation or third generation that we just require to have a booster dose and then prevent you from having a mild one. The most important thing that we need to get at right now is to prevent severe disease, hospitalizations, and death. Hospitalization or severe disease that may cripple the health system from even dealing with the normal malaria or AIDS or TB. This is why it's so urgent that we still go for vaccination, because even for the variant, it does prevent severe disease and hospitalization.
Oh, thank you for clearing that up. I want to get your thoughts on COVID-19 passports. European nations are just about to implement them. The UK and the United States, not so much, still, holding off on that already. But talk to us why this might become a necessity or not.
Well, there are two issues around, travel passports or vaccination passport. One, the question is it legal? The second one, is it ethical? I always like to tell people that there's a difference between legality and something that's been ethical or morally correct. In terms of international health regulation, it does make, Article 31 does make provision for vaccine or vaccination certificate or the electronic passport, as it were. As you all know, yellow fever is one of those. So by law, countries could require, and many countries, I think about 190, over 190 countries have signed to the International Health Regulation, which was first passed in 1969 and updated in 2005. However, it would be unethical at this stage where you have just only one part of the world, I think it's just about 2% of the world currently fully vaccinated.
Right.
And then you now introduce electronic passport. What then happens to those many African states where you're going to block them from partaking in any economic activity because they cannot travel and people cannot visit them? Many of them depend on tourism. So it will be unethical and immoral at this stage where you are the same countries preventing this distribution from happening to the rest of the world, even though it may be legal. And this is what calls into health diplomacy into action. And we've been talking about, global health diplomacy for a very long time. Many countries have all these health attaches. Health attaches are posted into all these embassies. What are they doing if they cannot have this kind of negotiation to allow countries to have access to vaccines or to negotiate this story about travel passport? So it's time to begin to make our health attaches in all the different embassies begin to work. We need a lot of global health diplomacy around this time. The COVID has actually shown that we need to ask questions about all these diplomats that are around the world. What are they doing?
Professor Lekun Ayo-Yusuf, it's been a real pleasure speaking with you. I'm glad you could make time to be with me on the Diplomatic Channel. I know we'll have more conversations in the near future. Thanks again.
Thank you very much.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Professor Lekun Ayo-Yusuf. Remember, you can watch other editions of the program on channelstv.com. Just search for Diplomatic Channel under Programs. Still ahead on the program, though, tributes continue to pour in for Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh. Stay with us. Thousands of people in the UK ignored official advice and descended on Windsor on Sunday to pay tribute to Prince Philip, the husband of Queen Elizabeth, who died on Friday, April 9th. Prince Philip, who was officially known as the Duke of Edinburgh, will be given a ceremonial royal funeral, not a state funeral, as planned before the pandemic. It was a solemn Sunday in the UK as the country mourned Prince Philip, the Queen's husband.
Obviously, apart from the Queen herself, he's the longest serving and the oldest serving member of the royal family, and I've known him all my life. And when there's a death of a senior member of the royal family, it's an end of a historical era, definitely, yes. We're witnessing history today, in a way.
I was living in London when Diana died, and I didn't get the chance to go down then, but now having my own family, I think as it's only about half an hour from us, I just thought it was important for us all to come and just pay our respects, really. No greater reason, I just thought, it's important.
His children describe him as a loving father and teacher.
I particularly wanted to say that my father, I suppose the last 70 years, has given the most remarkable, devoted service to the Queen, to my family, and to the country, and also to the whole of the Commonwealth. And as you can imagine, my family and I miss my father enormously.
It's a great loss. I think the way I would put it is that we've lost almost the grandfather of the nation. He might have been our father, grandfather, father-in-law, but he meant so much to so many other people.
Princess Anne sent out a statement saying her father had been her teacher, supporter and critic, and he had left a legacy that would inspire. Outside of Britain, world leaders expressed their condolences. Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari, who is in the UK, released a statement saying, "The death of the Duke of Edinburgh is the end of an era. Prince Philip was one of the greatest and publicly recognizable international figures whose contributions to the Commonwealth will be remembered for generations to come." The Mexican president expressed his condolences. So did the New Zealand Prime Minister, who spoke about the Duke's strong connection to her country and his involvement in several organisations.
For over 50 years, the Duke of Edinburgh Awards have connected him to thousands of New Zealand young people. And of course, perhaps most importantly, he has served in support of Her Majesty the Queen for many, many years in her service to New Zealand, the Commonwealth, and indeed the world.
As did the Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison, who paid tribute to his life of service.
The Duke's life was one of duty and of service, of loyalty and of honour. Memories of him will of course tell stories of his candour and a unique and forceful and authentic personality.
US President Joe Biden called him a heck of a guy.
He was a heck of a guy. It was his lifetime of service to the United Kingdom and the whole Commonwealth was visible to everybody for a long, long time. And his bravery serving in World War II, as well as his being a champion of the environment, as well as the charitable things he set up.
A special service of remembrance was held for Prince Philip on Sunday. Buckingham Palace says his funeral will be held on Saturday, April 17th, with long-established plans withdrawn and scaled down because of COVID-19 restrictions. Iran's President Hassan Rouhani has reiterated the country's commitment to nuclear proliferation while overseeing the launch of advanced centrifuges at the underground Natanz nuclear plant to mark National Technology Day on Saturday. The country left a meeting with allied forces in Vienna with no assurances of removal of sanctions as they try to get it back on the plan of ceasing nuclear development.
Iran has breached many restrictions imposed by a 2015 deal on its atomic activities in response to former President Donald Trump's withdrawal from the deal in 2018. The two nations have laid out tough stances at indirect talks in Vienna last week on how to bring both back into full compliance with the accord. A live video link carried on state TV showed Rouhani ordering the injection of uranium gas into 164 IR-6 centrifuges, 30 IR-5 centrifuges, and mechanical tests on IR-9 machines with a capacity of 50 early IR-1 machines, a likely breach of the nuclear deal. The ceremony unveiled 133 advances over the past year in the country's nuclear industry, mostly in the fields of medicine, power, agriculture, and energy. The talks in Vienna, in which European Union officials are shuttling between the remaining parties to deal with the United States, aim to restore the bargain at the core of the agreement, which is restrictions on Iran's nuclear activities in exchange for the lifting of U.S. and other international sanctions.
The U.S. now has imposed about 1,600 sanctions.
The United States was the first to renege on that bargain under Trump, who vehemently opposed the deal and sought to wreck it. He pulled out, reimposed sanctions that were lifted, and brought in many more.
Iran is willing and able to go back to all the restrictions that the nuclear agreement had, and it's not really difficult.
Iran responded by breaching many of the nuclear restrictions.
They can basically
Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin arrived in Israel on Sunday on the first visit by a senior representative of the Biden administration, who stands on Iran as worried Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's government. Washington is seeking to reassure Israel on regional security issues while restarting talks so far indirect and inconclusive about a U.S. return to the 2015 nuclear deal. Israel has long been critical of the deal, saying it would not be bound by diplomacy.
And will now be delivering their remarks.
But by Sunday evening, Israel's Defense Minister Benny Gantz pledged to cooperate with the United States on Iran, voicing hope that Israeli security will be safeguarded under any renewed Iranian nuclear deal that Washington reaches.
Israel views the United States as a full partner across all operational threats, not the least Iran. The Tehran of today poses a strategic threat to international security, to the entire Middle East, and to the State of Israel.
As a major strategic partner for the United States, our bilateral relationship with Israel in particular is central to regional stability and security in the Middle East. During our meeting, I reaffirmed to Minister Gantz our commitment to Israel is enduring and it is ironclad.
Now there's hope for Iran, as earlier in the week, the United States said it was prepared to remove sanctions on Iran, including those that are inconsistent with the 2015 pact.
And that's the program this week. Thanks again for watching. I'm Amarachi Ubani. I'll see you next time.